Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Rajat Gupta. I'm a member of the Automotive Equity Research team at JPMorgan. Very pleased to have with us today Ben Volkow, CEO and co-founder of Otonomo. We will kick off the session with a presentation from Ben, after which we can go through any questions that you have and I have. Just to remind you that if you do have a question, please do ask it on the online portal. I'll be happy to ask that on your behalf, or you could also email the question to our team at auto_guys@jpmorgan.com. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Ben.
Thank you, Rajat. Thank you for inviting me over. Thank you and the entire JPMorgan team. I'm Ben Volkow. I'm the CEO and founder of Otonomo. And very excited to be here. It's a bit of tradition for us. I think that it's the third time we are part of this event. It was a great experience for us in the past, doing it in the flesh, and glad to do it virtually this time. So if it's okay, hopefully you see the slides. Let's start with the first slide, slide number 1. Just quickly, Otonomo is a startup company, but a well-established startup, 4.5 years old. Our product is called the Automotive Data Services Platform, and we work very closely with OEMs, helping them to build value and to utilize the data that is coming out of their connected cars. We have today about 12 OEMs agreements, serving slightly more than 22 million connected cars across North America and Europe, and collecting huge amounts of data. I actually believe maybe it's the biggest center for automotive data in the world. With your permission, let's move to slide 2. And really, just very quickly about the market and what we see there before we will jump into the COVID effects as the name of the presentation title is. Cars are getting connected. Almost every new car that comes out of the dealership today has a small SIM and a small modem inside. And very soon, every new car sold in North America and Europe will be connected. Let's move to the next slide, slide 4, please. And all those connected cars are really moving data centers on wheels. They have hundreds of different sensors. They collect data all the time, and they send this data to the OEM's databases. We see some cars there that are even collecting more than 150 parameters every couple of seconds. And it's what is called, in the technical jargon, FCD, like location and speed. But it goes much deeper. It goes to engine data and how many people in the car, and seat belts, and radio information, and ultrasonic sensors, and ADAS sensors, really moving sensors on wheels, you might call it. And let's move to slide 5. Analysts believe that this data has a huge potential. This is just an example from it. Got about 20 slides, I think, each one with a bigger number, and the number doesn't really matter. There's huge potential in car data to really empower and help to build an ecosystem of services, smart services around the car. One of the main challenges is that connectivity is very expensive for the OEMs. The modem is very, very expensive. Paying AT&T or Verizon is very expensive. Paying the cloud provider, the Azures, the AWSs, to store the data is expensive. And at the same time, the business of the OEMs works on very slim margins, single digit and very low single digit usually. So connectivity today is really a challenge, almost a problem for the OEMs. It's cut deep into the slim margins. And they're all looking for ways to utilize, to monetize, to build value, and really to offset some of this expense. And this is where Otonomo comes. Let's move to slide 6, please. As I said, our product is called the Automotive Data Services Platform. It's a cloud solution. We work very closely with OEMs and with large fleets and enable them to build value around their data. How do we do it? We connect with an API gently to their database. We take the data. We do a bit of magic to the data. We clean it, we normalize it, we secure it, we make sure that privacy is in place, we anonymize it where needed. And then we supply it to a variety of services that want this data in order to generate an ecosystem of new services. It could be a smart city, it could be financial services, it could be parking services, it could be retail services, it could be predictive maintenance services or safety services. There are really thousands of different services out there that are interested in car data. I think that OEMs today understand that if they use the data wisely, they can bring the satisfaction of the driver up. And an happy customer, a happy driver, will buy the same car again. If you can share the data with parking services and people will find parking a couple of minutes earlier, it's great value. If you can share the data with emergency services and people, in case of an accident, the emergency room will be notified with no delay, with information about how many people in the car and what was the accident impact, it saves life. People today, for many of them, it's more important than a few more horsepower in the car. Finding parking faster or having a great emergency service that saves life, I will take it anytime and you can keep a couple of horsepower to yourself. And this is where we enable the utilization of the data to build an ecosystem of adjacent services around the car. If it's okay, let's go to the next slide. 2 slides forward to slide 8. Otonomo has today, as I said, slightly more than 22 million connected cars that send us data on average every 30 seconds. Some cars send data only in the beginning or the end of the trip. Some cars send data every 5 seconds. The average is every 30 seconds. And it comes from 12 OEM partnerships. This next slide, please, slide 9, you can see some of the logos of our partners. Daimler, BMW, Peugeot, Mitsubishi, FCA. Those are a few of the OEMs that we can share from the 12 agreements that we have. And we work very closely with them really to put the data that they are collecting that is today really mainly a burden, mainly an expense, a security risk, a privacy risk, a cost factor, to turn it around and start to build value around it, make it into a revenue source and into a customer satisfaction source. With your permission, let's go to the next slide, slide number 10. And I'll share with you some of the examples of who wants the data and why. And really, I'll try to be swift here because I can talk for 4 hours. But we touch as an example smart cities. Smart cities want to get traffic speeds to you on the traffic lights. So the traffic lights will be optimized to the real-time traffic patterns. Or smart cities are interested in the road to find, for example, holes in the road. Or they want to get accident notifications from the vehicle to identify dangerous places or accidents in real time. We work with financial services that, for example, give loans for people that acquire new vehicles. They want to understand a bit better what's the status of the car, how many miles are on the car, is it being treated okay, are there any error codes in the car? for someone that gives a loan to the car, the status of the car is a risk. And they want to understand their exposure. And in return of sharing the data, of course, the driver will get a better interest rate. We do a lot of work around electric vehicles and the entire ecosystem. For example, when you charge the electric car, from the car data, we see the battery goes up. And then we know to help you to identify where there are charging stations located. We can help you even put score around them or to find malfunctioning charging stations. We do a lot of work with fleets. Fleets are very interested, for example, to replace the aftermarket hardware for connectivity with embedded modem. Why to pay upfront a lot of money for embedded for aftermarket modem where there's already a modem in the vehicle? Which reach your data set with less tie-in, and you can pay small amount monthly instead of paying upfront a lot. So we do a lot of work with fleets. I will stop here. Maybe I'll share a couple of examples of the data. I really think that the proof is in the pudding. If we can go to slide 11 and play the video. So what you see on the screen now is example of the vehicles we have in London. I think we have about 700,000 vehicles inside the M20. And the different colors are different events, like ignition on, ignition off, accident, or error code. And this is data that smart cities are very interested in. This is data that different financial services are interested in. This is data that parking services are interested in. And really many industries and many segments are interested in this kind of data. And London is just an example. We have seen similar video for Berlin and similar one for Seoul and similar one for LA. If it's okay, let's go to slide 12. And as I said, EVs is a segment that is very dear for us. We really see a lot of interest. Data is fascinating. Usually electric vehicles, because it's new architecture, are sending a lot of data. And also we feel we do something good in the way. So it's never too bad. And what you see here is really an example of a heat map of where electric vehicles tend to drive around the bay. And as I said before, we know to identify the charging stations. Also, we know to help really with many needs around this ecosystem. This is data that we provide to charging companies, to energy companies, to electricity companies, and different players inside the EV ecosystem. Let's go to the next slide, slide 13, if okay. And you see an example of traffic speeds in New York. We do a lot of work around this, really helping to drive and improve urbanism and life in the cities. And the GPS from the car is very accurate, much more accurate than the phone. It uses, by the way, the steering and the wheels and the strong antenna all the time. So you get to a very good accuracy. And we help the cities, for example, to map the cities, the city speeds, the driving behavior, and in different times of day, in different areas, under different circumstances across the city. Let's go to slide 14 for another example. And this is weather information. As I said, the data sets from the cars sometimes are up to 150 parameters. And it excludes the temperature and barometric pressure, and if it's raining or not raining, for example. And this is data that we provide to, for example, to weather companies. It enables them to understand what's the weather situation in different parts of the same street, for example. This is data that we provide to insurance or reinsurance to help them to understand possible climate challenges. This is data that we provide to tire manufacturers that offer a connected predictive maintenance service. And the weather, of course, has a big impact on the life and the safety of the tire. So just another example. With your permission, let's go to slide 15. And this is the last data example I want to share. This is data that comes from the ADAS camera. Cars across the US and Europe that has cameras from Mobileye and other manufacturers and send us the data. And it's amazing. We know to identify pedestrians, where they're standing and how many are there, or bicycles or construction. And again, very lucrative data set, nothing that I think wasn't available until very, very recently. And this is something that smart cities, mapping companies, transportation engineering, financial services are all interested in. They see the huge value that those new insights that really weren't seen before or weren't available before can provide to them. With your permission, I will go forward to slide 16. And I want to touch a slightly different topic or slightly different angle of our business. And this is really the effect that we see of COVID on our business, but mainly on the automotive data ecosystem. And there's some very interesting effects or insights that I would like to share. For us, the main enabler or our partners are the OEMs. They are the ones that are providing us the data. And we really saw all the OEMs doubling down and shifting gears in the last 3-4 months. I think there are a couple of reasons why we see OEMs moving even faster than before in such troubling times for the industry, for everyone, but especially for the automotive industry. I think that OEMs understand that data can generate real revenues. And today, every dollar is important. And yes, maybe they won't be able to generate billions of dollars from day one, but it's very important to put the wet in the water. And also the dollars, the revenues that come from data business are, in terms of margins, are 20, 30, or 40x more compared to selling vehicles. If we say that selling vehicles, the margins are single digit and usually low single digit, then data, it's virtual. There's no reason that the margins won't be 80% and above. So every dollar, much more of this, it stays in the pocket of the OEM. I think another reason is maturity. The OEMs have been busy in connecting their fleets. Some of them have been doing it for a long time. GM has been in the front for many years. Daimler and BMW the same. But many OEMs have done the first steps in the last year or two. And I think today, in what we see in the ecosystem, that almost all the OEMs have their cars connected, or at least a big chunk of the fleet. Most of the OEMs have the backbone ready to share data with third parties. So the hard work, the investment was already done. And now there's only benefit. So we really see OEMs doubling down and moving forward much faster than before in those troubling times. And it's very encouraging. I think that OEMs like us, data is really the connecting, the connectivity of the next, of everything that almost is coming. EVs are dependent on data, and autonomous vehicles are connected on data, and mass is connected on data. And OEMs are fully on board in really building a data ecosystem. In terms of suppliers, the tier ones, the tier twos, here we actually see the other kind of effect. We really see them doubling down and focusing on the traditional business. And if in the past we saw OEMs talking about marketplaces, data, connectivity initiatives, tier ones, and we see many of them are really going back to the comfort zone. And an announcement from Continental a couple of, about 9-10 months ago about building a marketplace for data with HP. it was closed down. Conti decided to focus on the core business. And we see similar initiatives also put on hold, and really the tier ones are focusing on where they come from, where they feel convenient, where the core expertise are, and less on innovation and data or connectivity. In terms of, we really
I think we can't hear you, Ben. I think we lost your voice.
We see market maturity. We see them using more and more data. Many of them also, when COVID hit, lost the base. All of them were building, for example, trying to understand trends. And the moment COVID started, the market completely changed. So they needed to start from an incline request for data. So a lot of requests around data there. I want, with your permission, to go to the next slide and talk a bit about some of the emerging trends that we see in the market. So we definitely, I think the two things that I want to share is that we see more and more fleet-related work around connectivity and data. I think that fleet represent a large opportunity. I think the OEMs understand it, and now that they got most of them the connectivity in place, most of them have the infrastructure in place, they are starting to look into the fleet use cases in more depth. And in my view, it's one of the biggest segments out there for data services. Fleets today are highly connected, but they are highly connected from aftermarket devices. And the opportunity for OEMs is really to come in and be the connectivity suppliers instead of the aftermarket suppliers. And it's really a win-win for both the OEM and the fleet. Another interesting trend that we see is that if until now we talked about data from the vehicles through the OEM database to Otonomo or another marketplace and then third parties, we really see also the need for food delivery, want to be able to open the trunk remotely. Car servicing companies want to be able to open the fuel hatch remotely. So we see more and more use cases where the need is not only to send data from the car to the service, but also to send commands from the service to the car. And many of the OEMs are implementing support for such capabilities really as we speak. We also see more use cases coming. A lot of use cases around electric vehicles. I think for us, it's a way to see from our perspective the shift and the double down on electric vehicles, for example. So it's very exciting times in the data, automotive data industry. Really very fast growth over the last 4 or 5 months. And when we look into the pipeline and what we see in the market, we really don't see it slowing down. We actually think that a lot of the impact of the last few months of the industry, and a lot of it was negative, but on the data side, good things are happening and will continue to happen. Thank you very much. I'm here, I'm still here around for any questions if they are.
Great, Ben. Thanks a lot for the presentation. Really interesting insights here and a great story. I just had like a couple questions that I wanted to run through. You talked about a number of use cases for the connected car data. How do you decide where to focus on, and what are the highest value use cases? There's the autonomous autograph that you had launched as well. So could you just talk a little bit more about that? Did you get that?
Sorry, I cannot really hear you. Can you please repeat the question?
Are you able to hear me now, right now?
I can hear you better, yes.
Yeah, I was just asking, you talked about a number of use cases towards the end of the presentation. Was just curious, how do you decide to focus, where to focus, and what the highest value use cases are? You launched the Otonomo autograph recently, last year. So just could you talk a little bit more about that, on like how do you decide where to focus on the most?
Yes. So really part of what we do for the service we provide to the industry is really to educate about the different use cases and what maturity with a high value for the driver. There are some use cases with high monetization potential. We try to really work together with our OEM partners and map the use cases so we can together help them to march upon the right use cases. Because really, as I said, some use cases could be very quick wins and very quick customer satisfaction drive. Some of them might take more time, but they have much more impact in the longer run. So we try really to map it and share the knowledge with the industry. We try to update the autograph every quarter because it's very dynamic. It changes all the time. So that's something we are very proud of this work.
Got it. That's helpful. I just had one more question. You had the recent collaboration with Fiat Chrysler in Europe, to use that data to reduce congestion and pollution through advanced mapping and traffic management. Can you talk about some of the offerings that service providers can make use of these data sets? And are there any regulatory challenges that you expect to face? And also, could you talk about how long or how much testing would be required until more OEMs and regions can adopt that solution?
I'm sorry, it was very hard for me to hear. I apologize. I don't know what's the problem with the internet, but can you try to repeat and hopefully it will work better?
Yeah, I was just talking about the recent collaboration with Fiat Chrysler in Europe, where they're using the data to reduce congestion and pollution through advanced mapping and traffic management. Just curious as to, can you talk about some of the offerings that service providers can make use of these data sets, and then any regulatory challenges that you expect to face? And then also, can you talk about how long or how much testing is needed until more OEMs can, adopt this technology?
So, Rajat, I'm not sure I heard all the question, but I heard parts of it. And
okay, no
yes,
problem.
Fiat Chrysler is a fresh partner. We are very proud of it and very thankful for the partnership. And really, they provide us the vehicle data. We announced recently the partnership for a variety of use cases. And I will share with you that before you take the data and share it with the world, a lot of things needs to be happen. The data needs to be cleaned. The data, when it comes out from the vehicle, has mistakes. The data needs to be normalized. It needs to meet certain API requirements. The data needs to be blurred or anonymized to take out any personal identifiers. The data needs to go through the right consent mechanism to meet GDPR. So before we even start to talk with an OEM like FCA about business and hopefully you heard me that the connectivity is really poor, so I apologize for it.
No, not a problem. I think it was incredibly useful presentation, and I think we have just run out of time here as well. So, thanks so much for joining and sharing your story. And we look forward to having you at the conference again next year as well.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.